Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to my book corner, and today is the start of the Read What You Own challenge. So I thought I would do another haul video, my last one for the year, of all the books that I've picked up between my last haul, which I think was Alive, and now. So we're going over a little bit over a month, because I think this runs from about the 28th of September to today, when I'm recording, which is the 4th. When this goes up, the Read What You Own challenge is started. My bank card will probably be put away. We're going to start with the physical books, and then we're going to go on to the ebooks. There's a lot here, a lot more than I thought there was. Now, in my defense, he says with no defense. No, in my defense, a number of the ebooks were part of one of the Stuff Your Kindle days, specifically for fantasy and sci-fi. So there is a fair few on here that were free, but I've still managed to pick up a lot more than I expected. But with all that said, let's just jump straight in and start with the physicals. These first couple are going to be really shiny on screen, but I will on the side of the screen put the descriptions and the titles as well. And the first two are both manga, both yaoi. The first one I've already read, I covered it in my monthly wrap-up, and that is The Dangerous Convenience Store by 945. I don't know if there's a directory to see who 945 is, but there we go. This was pretty sweet. The blurb is: college student Yao Ai-jun works the graveyard shift at a convenience store to pay his bills. The shift sucks, but the money's good, and the customers, mostly mobsters and hoodlums, don't cause too much trouble. That might be due to Gun Woo, a tall, hunky gangster who frequents the store for booze and cigarettes. He's scarier than the rest of the clientele, but seems to have a soft spot for Ai-jun, defending him from the more volatile customers. Could there be more behind Gunwoo's protective actions? And if so, is Ai-jun prepared to be part of Gunwoo's violent world? So, this was a lot more explicit than I expected it to be, but was overall pretty sweet. I have done a full breakdown of it, or, well, not full breakdown, I've covered it on my wrap-up, so that's number one. Now, a book that I did know was going to be explicit, and is another yaoi, is The Titan's Bride. I believe Noah wishes to steal this off me, after I showed him some artwork in it, which I cannot show on here. This may have been covered on the last video as well, I'm not sure. So, in a world of giants, there's no such thing as a little crush. Senior Kwachi Mizuki is about to take his final exams and graduate high school when he finds himself in the world of Titans. Not only is he no longer anywhere near home, but one of the giants, Prince Caius, has claimed Koichi as his bride. Thanks to a disturbing world-ending prophecy, the prince's upcoming nuptials cannot be with anyone of this world. Since Caius has no plans to send Koichi back to Earth, he is wholeheartedly set on taking him as his wife. Very, very, very explicit from just leafing through. I'll get to that in the Read What You Own challenge at some point. I may blush, but there we go. So that's the two mangas. But then we have this pile of books right here. So we're going to start with a novel by one of my subscribers, who is amazing. And what's really struck me when watching her videos, because they have their own channel on YouTube, I will link it down below, is the amount of research that goes into the books. And this is Memories Hostage by Margaret Pinard. So it's set in 1883 England. The McFarlane family has earned a reputation for being titans of the rail, coal and textile industry. Elder brother Henry toes the line in all respects, but younger brother Horace has allowed a shadow to fall on their speckless record with his dalliances with ladies. When a young woman is found with not a stitch of clothing nor a shred of memory in their house, the McFarlanes must keep it secret while scouring their history and hers for any clue as to why she was placed there. So, bit of a mystery by the sounds of it. Historical fiction, I touched on this in my Your Paper Quest box video, that's up above as well. Not something I normally read, but I'm curious. It might be a new genre for me to bounce into. So, and if you want to check Margaret's channel out, she's absolutely amazing, so wholesome. I have linked that down below for you. Up next was one of my new releases that I've read in the last month. Again, I have already covered this in the reading wrap up, and that is the that's proper shiny. The Legend of White Snake by Cher Lee. This is a retelling of one of the big four Chinese folktales, a queer retelling specifically, about a spirit who swallows a magical pearl and therefore has the ability to transform due to it containing so many years of cultivation. However, that pearl was the only way for the other main character to save their mother from a debilitating illness caused by being bitten by a white snake. These two cross paths later in life, and you have a bit of a romance that goes on with it. Really, really sweet, really enjoyed it. Not without its flaws, but I was really invested in the characters by the end. Next one, we'll get the hardback out of the way actually. This only came yesterday. This has been on my list for quite a while. Last Sunrise in Eterna. This is a fae romance. I've just realised that one of the pages are folded inside and I didn't do it. That's slightly annoying. 3 teenagers are invited to spend 7 days on a secluded island floating off the coast of Puerto Rico to learn the magic of the elves. All they have to do is give up their dreams. So this was actually one of the books that was on my potential new releases reads earlier this year. I think it came out back in, I want to say February, it might not have been, it was around February time. And it's been on my list all this time, and I thought before the Read What You Own challenge kicks in, I need to pick it up. I think it was reduced as well at the time. So there we go, we have another fae romance, because I'm determined to find a good one, because Akatar isn't that. Speaking of romance, however, a couple of people have been curious to see what I think of this one, so I finally relented. I've got one with sprayed edges. Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. So I don't know a huge amount about this, other than it's a romance. It's YA. A love story that conquers all. 18-year-old Iris dreams that one day her writing will make a difference. But at home, she's barely holding it together. Her brother is missing on the front line, so each night Iris writes letters to him and slips them beneath her wardrobe door, where they vanish, or so she thinks. The letters have made their way into the hands of Roman Kit, her cold and handsome rival at the paper. When he anonymously writes back, they forge a magical connection that will seal their fate forever. So, getting magical realism vibes, which again, not normally my thing. I prefer magic in high fantasy settings, but you know, that's just me. But I'm curious. It had a lot of buzz when it came out, and I've sort of let that die down a little bit and seen a bit more discourse on it since. And it was part the buy one get one half price on at Waterstones. So there we go. But while I was in there, I did pick up another book that only came out quite recently, and that is Old Wounds by Logan Ashley Kisner. I believe this is a debut novel. It's a YA horror. I will be reading this in November at some point. This, again, is one of the new releases for this year that was on my list. I actually had this pre-ordered at one point, but I cancelled it and thought I will read it at a later date, and then saw it again on offer. So, Erin and Max are 2 trans kids trying to get to California. Max is desperate to finally transition, and Erin wants to understand why she's on the trip at all, after Max broke up with her 2 years earlier. But when they find themselves stranded in the creepy woods of rural Kentucky, they suddenly have much bigger problems. First, there's the creature that, according to legend, feeds on girls, and then there are the locals searching for a female sacrifice. If they hope to survive, Erin and Max have to stop running from their attackers, from each other, and ultimately themselves. I absolutely adore the cover for this one. I've heard decent things. This will probably be one of my reads for Trans Awareness Week, so there we go. Next up, we have a cover by, no surprise there, Yuri and the Nightmare Painter. Now, I have not read anywhere near enough Brandon Sanderson to justify buying another Brandon Sanderson book, but I was not going to put this one down. This was one of his secret projects, I believe. I think this one's had more of a mixed review than some of the other ones, but I don't care because pretty book cover. There is a world, one of endless nights, surrounded by an even deeper darkness, filled with nightmares come to life, twisted shapes that slink to windows and ease open doors, sliding across floors to look down on helpless faces. There is another world, a bright world, so bright it burns, filled with stacked stones that call forth miracles, raised by calloused hands that tremble in their work, drained with each stone lifted, settled, lifted again. Between these worlds, two souls connect, collide and twine. A bridge, a path, a road to both worlds changing forever, or their complete destruction. That tells me nothing about the book, and I know nothing about the book, other than pretty cover. So excited for that one. And then, funny story with this last one. This is the last of the physical ones. I picked this up because pretty cover. And it turned out that my good friend Elaine over at Cobalt Dragon, I just watched her review about this book and I didn't realise it was the same book because I didn't even read the title of this. I just saw it and thought, I've got to have it because it's pretty. And then when I got back and I was speaking to Noah over at the Bookworm, he had picked it up on his last shopping trip, but he actually knew what he was getting. That is Blackwater Book 1, The Flood. Now, it's very shiny. One thing that's really odd about this is the spine is backwards to what most spines are in terms of the way it's printed, which I find really curious. It's like it's actually designed to actually be stacked rather than side on, which I find curious. And I'm going to admit to this now. Just before I started recording, I've realised I get discount at Waterstones through work. So I have actually just bought a gift card and gone and bought all the rest of the books. So I have got, one of them isn't out yet because these were all re-releases. But they're all very pretty and I wanted them all on my bookshelf. So I hope I like it because otherwise I've just spent a load of money on shelf decorations. But for this one, in Perdido, Alabama, the dark, menacing waters of the local river have risen, flooding the small town of Cascais. A family of rich landowners are counting the costs, led by Mary Love, the powerful matriarch, and by Oscar, her devoted son. The family must somehow turn their fortunes around, but they haven't anticipated the sudden appearance of Eleanor Demert, a mysterious but seductive young woman with a troubling past. For Eleanor is not all that she seems. Very excited about this. I think I'm going to be doing this as a buddy read with both Noah and Elaine at some point. But like I say, I have the rest of the books coming as well. They just are not here yet, so I can't physically show them. So that's the physical books. We have a lot more to come though. On to digital then, and we have a lot here. We're going to start with one I'm most excited about. We start with the erstwhile Tyler Kyle by Steve Hugh Westenra. So this is a comedy horror. I have had this on my radar for ages. Tyler Kyle doesn't believe in monsters. A washed-up 30-year-old actor and reluctant cryptid investigator, Tyler is used to playing Scully to his best friend Josh's Mulder on their stupidly popular YouTube channel. God, that must be nice. But when Tyler receives previously unseen footage of the B-movie bombshell mother who abandoned him 18 years ago, footage linked to an isolated island in the Canadian wilderness, the mystery is one conspiracy he's determined to investigate. The fact that following the scent gives Tyler an excuse to run away from the straight Josh, whom he drunkenly made out with, is just a cherry on the shit sundae. But Echo Island isn't what it seems. Somewhere amongst its pine-clad hills lurks the stalker whose footage lured him to the island in the first place. And behind its eerily scenic veneer hides a twisted secret buried in its roots as a gay conversion camp. As Tyler retraces his mother's footsteps, he discovers a supernatural connection the residents share with the island, one that calls to Tyler the same way it did his mother. Face to face with the supernatural, he sure as shit wishes he hadn't gay panicked and left the cryptid-obsessed Josh behind. Pursued by the stalker, searching for his mother and debating whether it's possible to queerbait yourself, Tyler comes to realise that it doesn't matter so much whether you believe in monsters, if they believe in you. So, very excited for that one. I'm going to rifle through the next few pretty quickly because I've already touched on them on the channel before. First up is Stay in the Light by A.M. Shine. This is the follow-up to The Watchers. I have a full review for this one up if you want to check it out. The link is on screen. The super quick blurb for this one: you may have escaped, but you'll never be free. After her terrifying experience at the hand of the Watchers, Mina has escaped to a cottage on the west coast of Ireland. She obsessively researches her former captors, desperate to find any way to prolong the safety of humanity. When Mina encounters a stranger near her home, she fears the worst, for she knows the figure is not what it seems. Soon, people she has encountered start to disappear. Mina knows the Watcher's power is growing. She flees for her life. When she reports her fears, she finds her sanity questioned. Can she convince people that the Watchers are real and ready to strike, or will she suffer the fate that she dreaded since first encountering these malevolent beings? It is worth noting that it doesn't mention it in there, but there is a second POV throughout the book as well, which does a good job of balancing the narrative for this one. Reviews above, I really enjoyed this. Ushers was up next. This is a short story by Joe Hill, following Martin Lawrenson, who is a 23-year-old counsellor for the disturbed teenagers. He's bright, compassionate, attractive and outgoing, and also, and this is the important thing, not dead, because he's probably survived not one but two deadly disasters, and is currently being investigated by two federal agents who feel that maybe, just maybe, he was involved in both of them in a way that is not obvious at the beginning. This was a lot of fun, and a hell of a lot got squished in the, I think it's 30 pages, thereabouts. Page time for this. Really good. Highly recommend this. Super quick read. It is Amazon exclusive, I believe, so just something to bear in mind there. Dead Inside was the next one I purchased. This I actually buddy read with Baddies Rad and Noah over at the Bookworm. Otherwise I was probably never going to get to this. This is an extreme horror. The two main characters, one likes to eat dead babies, and the other one has a thing for corpses. I'm going to leave it there. If you have any curiosity about this, I was curious about this because of the cover. Please go and check your content warnings for this one first. The blurb is on the screen for you, but that was the next one I picked up. And if you want to know my thoughts, they are in my wrap-up video for October. Followed that with another buddy read purchase, and this was Unhinged by Vera Valentine. I read this with Book Hermit as well as Family and Books. The title of this is Unhinged by Vera Valentine. The title lives up to the book, to put it mildly. This is Door Erotica. This one lives up to its name. It's called Unhinged by Vera Valentine, and it describes the reading experience as well as the actual reading matter. The basics of this is that this is Door Erotica, with a surprising amount of world building as well and backstory. I was quite surprised by that. Check your content warnings. This does involve happy fun times with a doorknob, so be aware. Well, that's Unhinged by Vera Valentine. I'm now going in no particular order, so I'm going to start with Isle of the Gods. I first saw this over on Witch's channel while they were doing Battle of the Booktubers. And I've also recently seen, again, Book Hermit and Family and Books do a video on this one as well. I'm getting romantasy pirate vibes from this, which I'm all here for. When I was younger, I had a bit of an obsession with ships and seafaring and pirates, so this may well fill in a bit of a gap in my reading recently. I'm really interested to see how the world building works out more than anything else. It is a romantasy. I get an impression it may well be rivals or enemies to lovers as well, but we'll see. We'll see how we find this one. Couple of cover buys up next. We have Threads That Bind and Hearts That Cut. These are books 1 and 2 in the Threads That Bind series by Kika Hatsupoğlu. I probably just butchered that one. I don't know much about this other than your main character has some sort of relation to, if not the Greek gods, then some people from Greek mythology, more specifically the Fates. And the idea of the Threads of Fate has always been a fascinating one to me as well. This also seems to have some sort of mystery going through it because murder's involved. You also have a romance element, so this is another romantasy series. I'm pretty sure this classes as YA, although it does get a bit hard to tell sometimes. I've only put the blurb for book 1 on the screen, which I've only flip read, just in case there's any spoilers in the one for book 2, because I've not actually read the blurbs for either of these other than just skim reading book 1. So there we go, that's Threads of Fate and Hearts That Cut. Continuing on with the theme of Greek mythology, we have Heroes of Olympus, the son of Neptune. And this was a really stupid purchase for me because I've only read Percy Jackson book 1, and this is part of a different series that Percy Jackson's involved with. So I'm probably not going to get to this for quite a while, and almost certainly not during the Read What You Own challenge, because I'm going to have to get the first of the Heroes of Olympus books first and read through the rest of Percy Jackson. So then did a stupid. Still, I've got it now. I will get to it, and because I've bought it, I now have to buy more books at some point in March, so we'll get there. I do need to mention though, I did skim the blurb of this after I realised this wasn't the book I thought it was, because I did think this was book 2 in the Percy Jackson series, because I'm an idiot. And bonus points for the use of the word klutz, which is a word you don't see very often anymore, and I appreciate its usage here. A friend of mine recommended book 1 in this next series, and me being me, I just went off and bought the trilogy box set rather than just reading book 1 and seeing if I liked it. This is the Broken Empire trilogy, comprising Prince of Thorns, King of Thorns, and Emperor of Thorns. Massive thank you to Greg for recommending this one to me. He seems to think I will really enjoy this, and just glancing at the blurb, I think I will do. A chaotic world, a fallen noble who is now an immortal. You have magic, you have necromancy, you have trauma. This is exactly my sort of fantasy, so I am really, really looking forward to getting to this one. Massive thank you to Greg for recommending this. I think I'm going to absolutely love it. Claw by Katie Berry is up next, and this is an interesting one because this came about because of a conversation we were having in, I think it was Noah's booktube roundtable live that he did about a month ago, and we ended up talking about the different use of language in books and how quite often I find the dialogue in US written books to be a little bit stilted, and that's because of the different uses of language, because US English is low context, whereas UK English is high context in its usage. And I was asked what I thought about Canadian writing if I had the same issue, and I realised I'd not really read a huge amount by Canadian authors, hence Claw by Katie Berry, a Canadian author set in Canada. So this is set in British Columbia. There's been a number of animal attacks, and we have a newly stationed conservation officer who is investigating some of these. However, there's something else going on behind the scenes. This is a horror. I suspect this has cryptids involved based on the description. There's also mention of high-level corruption, so I'm getting cult vibes as well. This feels like it may well be exactly my sort of horror, so this looks like it's going to be a lot of fun as well. It's also book 1 of a series which I didn't realise until just now when I started reading some bits on it. So if I like it, yay, more books. We're going to continue the horror theme next with something that is kind of a cornerstone of British horror novels. This is The Rats by James Herbert. Specifically, this is actually the trilogy box set. I've only read one Herbert before, which was The Jonah, which was fine, but it wasn't really a horror. And from reading between the lines and reviews and stuff, that was one of his weaker works. But this is one that I have heard repeatedly in horror circles. Actually released back in 1974, so it's actually nearly a decade older than me as well. I know very little about it other than it's horror, it's British, it's gory, and it involves rats. Worth mentioning here as well, there's a quote from Stephen King for the 50th anniversary edition. The Rats is a splatterpunk deluxe, not only great gory fun, but a prime example of what was once called the British nasty. So there we go. I'm not sure what to expect with this one, but I'm genuinely excited to read some more Herbert. I think I actually bought more horror books than I read in October. Heads Will Roll is up next by Josh Winning, and I have seen this everywhere recently. I know Noah did a video on this recently over at the Bookworm. I'll link his video above, go check that out. And I saw it for 99p on ebook. So as much as anything else to annoy Noah, because he loves the fact that he keeps buying books and I find them considerably cheaper, I thought I would pick this up. You have urban legends, you have almost like I won't say summer camp, it's not really a summer camp, but you have that sort of vibe, but for adults only. You have a nod towards cancel culture, be that good or bad, I don't know. And it feels like this may be a ghost story, so I think I'll enjoy this one quite a bit. Probably a New Year read, this one, if I'm completely honest. But I highly recommend you go and check out Noah's video on this one as well. But that's Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. The next one on the list surprised me because I didn't realise it had been out quite as long as it had been. I think I was vaguely aware of it, but it really catapulted into my attention while I was on TikTok, which I am not anymore. The book in question is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. And I have seen this absolutely everywhere the last couple of years on social media. Currently classed as YA, I don't believe it was published as YA, which is worth noting. And one thing that is noted on the Amazon page is that this novel is narrated by Death, which I find really interesting, which I've only just realised. All I know about this book is that it takes place during the Second World War in Germany, and we have a main character who discovers a love of reading and goes about finding books wherever they can and basically pinching them, which is a dangerous thing to do at that time in that place. So, historical fiction, again, out of my wheelhouse, so we'll see how I go with this one. It's very well reviewed though over on everywhere from what I can see. And generally speaking, TikTok has not pulled me too far from the light, unlike some people. Political thriller up next, not something I read very often, but I do like politics, and let's be honest, right now is the season for politics. And this follows the story of a character who has become a real up-and-comer in American politics, who is now at the point where they're almost within touching distance of possible presidency. However, they have a hidden secret and they go by a different name to when they were younger, so when a postcard arrives with just their old name on it, their chief of staff begins to investigate. As Krista investigates and finds out more and more about a fateful encounter during a teenage summer, begin to ask the question, how far will she go to maintain her own career, as well as Andrew Harrison's, who's the potential future president. I do like my politics. I do struggle a little bit with thrillers sometimes, but this sounds a bit closer to what I would normally like. So I'm quite excited to dip into this because it's been a long time since I read a decent thriller. We hit my in defense portion now. The next 8 books are all ones I picked up on the Stuff Your Kindle day, so these all cost me nothing. Not sure how that works for justification of everything else I've bought, but never mind. We're going to start with When Gods Fall. This is book 1 of what is currently a duology. I don't know if it's going to go any further than that. This is another romantic story. And something I want to mention is, again, it's in the notes at the bottom on Amazon. When Gods Fall is the first book in the Gift of the Gods series. Please note this series is new adult and contains moderate steam, some violence, language and mature situations, recommended for ages 16 and up. And I really like that kind of note, and the term new adult is an interesting one. I'll be curious to see if that sticks. But the main tagline for this is two sisters, both destined for greatness. One will rise, one will fall. And I love the sort of duology of two main characters going in opposite directions. This has magic, all the gods are dead or gone. You have plots, you have political intrigue between various different realms, and you have a quest. So this looks really interesting. I'm curious to see how this one plays out. Engines of Alchemancy is up next by Scott Marlowe. This is book 1 in the Alchemancer series and was originally called The 5 Elements. No idea what to expect with this one, to be honest. I've just skimmed the blurb and I see the words mad sorcerers and dwarven raiders, demons, and it certainly hints at a mixing of science and magic, which I really do like and I don't think we see often enough in fantasy settings. Just skimming through the blurb, I see demons, mad sorcerers, dwarven raiders, so it has a load of those fantasy elements in there, as well as elemental magic, but also a nod towards science is made as well in here. Which gets me thinking, is magic actually being created by a mechanical device? Is that what they're looking for? Looks like you have two main characters who are both going off on their separate, maybe not quests, but investigations, and I get the impression reading this that they're both very different sorts of characters, so may well be pulling in opposite directions. Just glancing through this, this is maybe a bit of a dark horse if I get to it before the end of the year to make my top 10 list, just glancing through this. And also that cover is just amazing, just want to say that here. Darkwind, book 1 of the Starchaser saga by Renee Dugan is up next. This is a case of a title and a series name really grabbing me. Looks like you have a relatively standard fantasy setting with war coming from both sides of the Middle Kingdom and a naive princess who has to go on a journey of discovery to mould her into the fighting leader that she needs to be. Feels like it's a fairly standard fantasy fare just reading that, but that's perfectly fine by me. This is book 1 of 7 of a series, so that's a lot of books if I like this, and this is a chonker. It comes in at 504 pages. But if it's good, it gives me another series to start working from, and at least I have started on book 1 here. Speaking of chonky series, we have Cursebreaker Enchanted. This is by Melinda Kuxera. Comes in at just shy of 500 pages, but this is book 1 of 11. So, yeah, I'm potentially locking myself into a lot of reading with these. Again, this is kind of a pickup because of the title. I like magic, I like curses, I like enchantment. So you put Cursebreaker Enchanted in a title and I'm probably going to check it out, especially when it's free. Monsters, murder trees, dark magic, dark enchanted forests, a mystery to solve and a family to save, all sound really interesting to me. You have a missing, or should I say separated father and son dynamic here as well. Interesting concept. I'm really curious to see how well this one lands. Next up we have Soul Cage by R.L. Schultz. Coming in at about 460 pages. This only came out back in May of this year and is a debut. So this is a dark fantasy. The best sort of fantasy, so I'm expecting plenty of moral greyness going on here. But just glancing through this, what's fascinating to me looking at some of the reviews is the way the magic system works, because I absolutely love a well fleshed out magic system in fantasy. And this feels, or at least appears to be, powered by souls. So I can see a great deal of scope here for some moral dubiousness, abuse of power, necromantic shenanigans, and just in general a level of moral greyness. Now this is a book 1, book 2 is not out yet. As I said, this came out earlier this year. Does give me some vibes of the Summoner series by Gail Z. Martin that I read years ago, which I really enjoyed. So I'm hoping this can catch lightning in a bottle for me. The Witch's Crystal by Devon Gambrell is up next. This is another one that came out this year. This came out in February and comes in at around 430 pages long. I get the impression this may end up being part of a series, as there's a little tagline on the cover saying Tales from Izel, but as yet nothing is confirmed on Goodreads at least. Set a number of years after a massacre that still haunts the survivors, we have a kind of alliance between a night sorcerer, a prince, and a cursed witch to bring down the court of the sleeping queen, who wish to resurrect their queen using the witch's crystal, which is currently hidden in the netherworld and would require a powerful witch and sorcerer to get it. So I'm getting quest vibes here, high magic setting as well, and a typical good versus evil style of plot, which feels like it has global stakes for the world that this is set in. And whilst they are all fairly typical fantasy cliches, they are cliches for a reason. We have some middle grade fantasy horror up next. The Ash House by Angard Walker. I have seen two separate covers for this. One is very much almost like a haunted house aesthetic, and the second one is a group of children standing around each other, but most of them are entirely wreathed in shadow like shadow men, with, I presume, the main character of Sol being stood at the front, almost like a blazing white illuminating the shadows around him, which has a really creepy aesthetic to it. Described as a mix between Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children and Lord of the Flies, we're following a main character who has some form of mystery pain issue and goes to this special house to try and find a cure for this and be treated, as this is a house for special people like them. But also he has a bit of a memory issue, and all these kids are showing him around and trying to convince him to be there and want them to be part and give him the name of Sol. And there's clearly something else going on here. The covers give creepy vibes. The mild amnesia element is also always an interesting one, especially creepy when you introduce a child with that. Should be a quick read at 280 pages long, and this is the last middle grade on my list. And we're ending with a fantasy novella by Camilla Varick. This is Stone of Shadows, Stories of Gerion Book 1. This only comes in at 123 pages. This is described as a queer YA fantasy, and it's following a main character of Will, who is struggling to keep food on his table for his siblings. He's only 16 years old, dealing with bullies, but then one day he gets snatched by a dragon before discovering a stone that grants him invisibility and returning to the city. There is a level of mystery here, as Will makes new friends, allies? It's a bit unclear, but certainly there's a web of secrets here that Will needs to navigate. Sounds like a pretty fun, quick read, to be honest. Maybe one of the earlier ones I hit during the Read What You Own challenge. And again, potentially this gives me some more stuff to read further down the line if I enjoy it. Looking at the covers for the other two, you do see some of the characters repeated, but not all of them, so I'm curious to see if I enjoy book one, if the other ones are told from different points of view as well. So there we go, that is my last book haul of 2024. I am now banned from buying books, we'll see how well this goes, until March 5th. I will still be taking arcs in. I do have a couple of arcs which I've not covered in this video. I'll cover them as I read them. But that's it. That's my last haul for this year. Are any of these books of interest to you? Have you read any of them? Let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you all very soon.